It was on a plane ride that The Lion King was conceived by Jeffrey Katzenberg, Roy Disney, and some other guy who I don't know. They're like, what if we have a film set in Africa? And Katzenberg's like, yeah, I wonder. And that's how it was conceptualized. And then a producer jumped on, and the reason why this producer jumped on is because lions are cool. Direct quote from that producer. During the film's development, it went through a lot of changes. The original story is kind of insane. Alright, so here's what the original plot was. It was about a battle between lions and baboons. Scar was the leader of the baboons, and Rafiki was a cheetah, apparently. Timon and Pumbaa were Simba's childhood friends. And Simba was also not able to leave his kingdom because he was lazy and a horrible character. That's what they wrote. And this was because Scar manipulated him so he could overthrow Simba when he came of age. So that's the original plot synopsis. But yeah, from the get-go, Lion King was supposed to be a war between two kingdoms and stuff like that, and all this other political stuff. This is all ideas of Katzenberg, who quoted saying, "It is a little bit about myself." So I guess he had his dad die by his uncle throwing him off a cliff. That's what I'm getting out of that. The original director on King of the Jungle, which is what it was originally called, wanted the film to be more documentary-like, which would have been interesting to see. However, other people wanted it to be more musically inclined, have more base narrative. So the original director left and was replaced. And then sort of the pieces started coming in together into the film that we know today as The Lion King, because this doesn't take place in the jungle, so that's why they changed the name. In order to get the film to look as close to Africa as possible, the crew would actually take a trip to Kenya and take a bunch of different photos, and a lot of these photos end up being part of the backgrounds, pretty much verbatim painted to exactly look like the photos they took. They got a lot of great source material and studying the animals because they actually had lions on set, believe it or not. So yeah, the crew intensively studied lions as well as having a full-grown male and a little cub on set. Here's the lion they were sketching, apparently. Isn't that neat? They had a lion. Like, hey, we're actually drawing a real-life lion. Pretty cool. Speaking of music, Tim Rice, who wrote some of the songs in Latin, will be involved in the story process with writing the songs, which kept changing all the way up until its release date. And I'd say he did a good job. Instead of Alan Menken, they got Elton John to do the music process, which is very interesting since I don't think he's ever done a soundtrack before that wasn't one of his albums. He's a great songwriter, but you know anything about Elton John is writing his own lyrics, so I guess it worked really well for him that he actually was able to compose the music while Tim Rice wrote the lyrics, and I think they did a good job. However, he didn't do the score for the film. That was done by someone else. And that was done by Hans Zimmer, who's a very interesting guy. His score for The Lion King is great. It sounds amazing. However, he's also a weird guy, and he has a lot of bad scores under his belt as much as he has good ones. And he fucked up the score in the new version, but what else do you expect from a guy who works with Pharrell Williams? Why the fuck do you work with Pharrell? He's a fucking hack. Whatever. The Lion King is considered to be their first original film. However, I think that's iffy, because some of the other films I thought were more original than non-original, but whatever. But it did draw inspiration from things like Hamlet, as well as the story of Moses from the Bible, apparently. There's a common misconception that Lion King is a rip-off of Kimba the White Lion, but there really isn't zero evidence, other than the fact that characters have a very similar name. In case you're wondering, Simba is Swahili, I believe, for lion, so it's not exactly an original name. It's probably the most generic name we could give a lion character. There's a whole video by YMS going over, it's hours long, explaining that they really have nothing in common, but you can go watch if you want. It's an interesting video, but yeah, the Lion King is not anywhere related to Kimba. The Lion King has a great cast, including the late James Earl Jones, who recently passed away as Mufasa, because he has a very powerful voice that fits a lion very well. While Jeremy Irons has a very different sounding voice, but also fits a lion, a more mischievous lion, and he does an excellent job voicing the villain here. The characters of Timon and Pumbaa's voice actors actually know each other in real life. When they met them when they were auditioning, they were like, hey, we should do the hyenas together. The guy plays Timon, Nathan Lane, wanted to voice Zazu. But when they did it, people were like, you know what, you guys should be the comic relief characters, so they were cast as Timon and Pumbaa. There's a fun fact for you. They originally wanted Cheech and Chong in this movie, which is a very interesting casting, but only one of them signed on, so they couldn't get the other one, so it was a no deal. The Lion King is being made alongside another Disney film known as Pocahontas. Now, Pocahontas was supposed to be the big Disney film. It was supposed to be the one that's going to win Best Picture, following and beating the Beast's footsteps of not winning it, but almost doing it. So a lot of animators thought that this is going to be the prestige film. It wasn't. Pocahontas sucks, and I'll get to that next time. But yeah, a lot of people did not want to work on Lion King. However, they actually just pushed people from the Lion King staff to actually really work on the script and make it as good as it possibly can, ironically being the more famous of the two films. Isn't that ironic? The film also has impressive use of CGI with a new technique where they use AI to make wildebeest stampede actually work, so all the little movements worked right, and even did some cell shading to make them look like they're actually 2D, which looks really good in the film. This stampede thing is great. So that was the making of The Lion King. When it was released in 1994, it was a smash hit, becoming the highest-grossing film of that year, as well as the highest-grossing animated film of all time for a very long time, until Toy Story 3 in 2010. To this day, it's still the highest-grossing traditionally animated film, and that's because it was a smash hit at the box office and became a cultural phenomenon instantly. And this is the film that they didn't have any hope for, and Pocahontas was the one that's going to be a smash hit. Obviously, they thought wrong.
You thought wrong!
So what do I think of The Lion King? Well, it's, a little overrated. Now, this is the part you probably want to eat me alive, but this film is still good. I just don't think it's as great as the other Renaissance films, in my personal opinion. The animation is spectacular, and I imagine seeing this on a big screen would be really cool to see. The villain is amazing, but this film has some structural issues that kind of make it hard for me to watch as much as the other one. This film goes a lot darker than other Disney films, and that's one of the highlights for me. But in order to compensate for that, they have hard-hitting comedic relief characters that are way overbearing compared to previous installments. I do not hate the characters of Timon and Pumbaa. They actually work very well in The Lion King 1.5, but in this film they feel kind of out of place in my opinion. And I think the film thinks they're funnier than they actually are because they keep stealing screen time for more interesting things, especially later in the second half of the film. Even the quote-unquote romance scene between Simba and Nala is taken up entirely by them. Well, not entirely, but partially. What other Disney romance song ends with the comedic relief characters singing the song and then crying about it? And the biggest problem is most of the humor revolves around, well, the one character farts a lot, and the other character makes fun of the character for farting a lot, and I just don't find that funny. To me, it makes the second half a lot harder to watch, for the most part. I'm also not the biggest fan of the song. There are two songs that are really great in the film. Most of the others they're okay, but they don't do a lot for me. I'll talk about that more when I get to the tier list part of the video. Some of my favorite elements of the film are some of the lion characters, specifically Mufasa and Scar. I think are really great characters. I would say it's safe to say that Mufasa is probably the best father character in Disney production, because there's not a lot of great dads, and he's just a great dad overall. And then killing the character off in midway through the movie is such a ballsy move. This is basically Bambi's mom's death, but taken to the umpth degree. We know this character way better than Bambi's mom, and the death hits a lot harder. The reason why I like this scene so much, because Disney does a lot of these fake-out deaths, especially near the end, but this is not a fake-out death. We actually see the body, and it's the main character that's forced to reconcile that their parent is dead. And that's an important message, because a lot of times people die in life, and you can't just ignore it, because they have, It also makes the villain Scar a lot more intimidating. While Disney villains in the past have done evil things, this guy quite literally murders his own brother, then blames his own nephew about his death. What a jackass. And unfortunately, they had to make it so, well, there's comedic relief, so you don't feel too relieved. You think the film would become a little more darker since, he's growing up, but it really isn't, because like I said, these characters take up most of the screen time in the second half. While there is some great scenes in the second half, there's also a lot of problems. One, Simba is voiced by Matthew Broderick, which is a really weird choice. It's not bad, but it makes the character not work as well for me. There's this great scene with Rafiki and Simba where he sees his dad's past, and this scene's great. Including the lesson about learning from the past is also great. The biggest problem with this is the confrontation initially with Scar actually did it, but then he learns that Scar actually did it. The confrontation initially with Scar does not going on here at all. These lioness characters are so inactive they're going to let Simba die here until Scar reveals at the last second that he actually killed Mufasa as a dick move. And that's the only time they actually help it out. It'll be more powerful if they did it either way, because Scar's such an asshole, but whatever. This one scene has so many problems that it's insane, actually, just to go over it. This was just a simple fight between Simba and Scar fighting over the kingship and avenging Mufasa, but it's not like that. Like, Simba has to go confront his past about his dad's death, but he actually wasn't even involved in the first place, really, so I don't really get it. Anyway, Scar's given a very brutal death where he's eaten alive by hyenas, and that's actually a really great death since he's been manipulating them the whole time. I mean, they were his Third Reich for a while there. This is quite literally what it's supposed to be. Speaking of which, there's some sexual things in this movie. In the original version of this scene, it said SFX for special effects, because that's what it was. However, it didn't take long for people to misconstrue it as SEX, So it was changed in later versions. This is the Disney conspiracy. They're trying to hypnotize kids into liking sex. If I was making that argument, I would use this scene instead, where this lion gives Doomy eyes big time. Like, geez Louise, Disney, what were you doing with this scene? Trust me, there's a lot of people right now who are getting a boner just looking at this picture. You guys are freaks! This is the only thing that was changed, since the alligators are changed too for some reason. They entirely reanimated this shot for no reason. Was there something wrong with this shot? I mean, I guess they look a little weird, but I don't know why they reanimated this entire shot completely. It makes no sense. They also re-added a song called The Morning Report that was added to the Broadway version to this newer version. This song isn't any noteworthy good. It actually, pacing-wise, doesn't make any sense as a song to begin with. And it's very distracting that Simba's voice sounds completely different in this one song only, but whatever. Besides that, Lion King is a pretty good movie. When it comes to singular moments, it probably has some of the best singular moments in Disney history. Some of the epic moments. You feel it. There is powerful moments and scenery in this movie. But honestly, it's bogged down by okay characters and comedic relief that feels a little out of place in this film. Would I have wanted a more epic and darker movie? I guess. But the film we got is not bad. Quickly after, The Lion King would be adapted into Broadway, and the Broadway version would be a huge success due to its costuming and design, and it would be the best-selling Broadway show of all time, still running to this day. Some of the music from the Broadway show would actually end up in the direct-to-VHS sequel, or DVD sequel, whatever you want, known as Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, which is an adaptation, loosely, of Romeo and Juliet, much like the first one was an adaptation of Hamlet. It's good, not great. Another sequel was a very weird midquel called 1.5, which is entirely from Timon and Pumbaa's perspective. Despite not really caring about those characters in the original Lion King, they're actually used very well in this film, which is very strange. It's actually a very funny and well put together movie, oddly enough. The Lion King was given an awful remake in 2019, and unfortunately will become the highest grossing animated film of all time. I think it'll surpass Recently by Inside Out 2, but I'm not too sure. Much like the other remakes, it is bad. And it's not even live action, it's actually entirely animated, so that's just lie out the fact. This is laughably bad. And of course, this is getting a sequel, actually a prequel, but still stupid.
Obi-Wan Lion King.
That's an actual line in the trailer. Are you joking? That's actually a line in the trailer. Wow. In recent years, The Lion King got a spin-off show called The Lion Guard about Simba's other kid that isn't the one that was in Lion King 2, called Keon. And I haven't seen it. It looks interesting, and there's a pilot movie, so go check it out if you're interested. There's also another Lion King TV show in the 90s just called Timon and Pumbaa, which is a comedic show starring, well, Timon and Pumbaa. I've actually heard good things about it, but I wouldn't know. I've never seen it. Disney really liked using these characters, especially in their PSAs, which is the whole series about it, called Wild About Safety. These characters are just okay, so I don't really know why they make so much stuff with these characters. You ever want to see a spin-off of a spin-off? Well, this It's Unbelongable, whatever it is a short about documentary stuff based off the Lion Guard. Fascinating. It's just a documentary series about animals. So yeah. And of course, Lion King has a lot of video games. Of course, there was a tie-in video game, which was released on the NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis, Master System, Game Gear, and Game Boy. They all are pretty much the same game, just a different lower quality if you play the older or handheld consoles, and higher quality if you play on the Genesis, Super Nintendo. The Lion King game is pretty well known. You start off as Simba as he grows up through the course of the movie. But however, this game is a platformer that is quite challenging, and it can be a little bit annoying to some players. It's not as easy as some of the other games we covered, but that's okay. It's still well known and iconic, and you can play it on modern day consoles with its Aladdin combo pack, as I mentioned before in the Aladdin video. There was another Lion King game released for the Super Nintendo known as Timon and Pumbaa's Jungle Games, which is basically a collection of minigames. There's a PC version that actually has cutscenes and voice lines, but the Super Nintendo one does not have that, so I recommend the PC version if you want to play this game. Jumping up a console generation, we get Simba's Mighty Adventure on the PlayStation 1, where we get to control Simba throughout his life, much like the previous installments. Some of the levels in this game are actually 2D rather than 3D, as you saw in the first level there. This game looks a little interesting, but I haven't heard anyone talk about it, so I have no idea if it's good or bad. Like some more Disney movies, we also have an animated storybook for the PC. I'm actually a big fan of these. I love the Toy Story one as a kid, and these look like interesting. I would love to pick up some more and actually play them, because they're quite fun, especially if you're a little kid. If you don't know, these are basically just point-and-click versions of the movie. They'll have look things on for part of the story, and you can click on certain things, do little activities and mini-games. And I don't know why, I just find them very charming. Maybe just my nostalgia for late 90s, early 2000s PC games. But if you just want to play games, you have the Lion King Activity Center full of different mini-games you can play with the Lion King characters and stuff. Like, who would want to make a very pixelated puzzle? Lovely. But hey, what if you don't know how to type on your computer in order to play these games? Well, don't worry, there's a Lion King game for that as well, with Timon and Pumbaa's Typing Adventures, where you get to learn how to type through jungle adventures. Cool. Actually, don't mind these typing games. It's a very useful skill to have. Actually, no, some people don't even know how to type, and they struggle a lot. So learning to type is not too bad to teach the little kiddos. The sequel film also got its own video games, like this game called Active Play. It's basically the Activity Center, but based on the Lion King 2. So there you go. Didn't have enough of PC collections of minigames? Well, there's another one called Lion King 2 Game Break, which is another collection of minigames from the Lion King, specifically the Lion King 2. I guess Disney thought there was not enough Activity Center Lion King games, so they had to make another one. Lion King 2 is not the only sequel that got a game. In fact, Lion King 1.5 also got a video game, but only on the Game Boy Advance, where you play through Lion King 1.5. It's kind of a weird game to make a game off of, but I guess someone had to do it, and they did. I forgot to mention this in the review, but the actual cool thing about the characters of Timon and Pumbaa is this is actually a relationship that exists in the wild. Meerkats have often hung around warthogs because it's a symbiotic relationship, as the warthog will protect the meerkats, and the meerkats will pick stuff off the warthog. So that's a pretty cool fun fact for you. It was not a random animal relationship. These peck, but meerkat and warthog will be fun characters. No, they actually based off real life, and that's pretty cool. The last Lion King game, released in 2004 on the PC, is this weird game where Timon and Pumbaa are just trying to help out some animals get back to the Pride Lands with some kind of weird-looking bad CGI. It's very young. It's centered, meaning that it's not made for older audiences, so it's one of those point-and-click adventures, but not really. Yeah, it looks fucking weird as shit. Those CGI models look terrible. But it's not as bad as the DVD menu for The Lion King. Look how awful Zazu looks like in the CG. Jeez Louise, I hope they never make a CGI Lion King movie. That'd be awful. Oh wait, they did. The Lion King doesn't actually have that many big attractions. It is very prevalent throughout the parks. There's not like a really big, oh that's the Lion King attraction. There will be in the future, as the second Disney Tokyo park, known as Park Adventure, some weird park that no one really talks about, is going to have an expansion that has a Lion King area where you can see Pride Rock. Dude, Pride Rock! And it looks pretty interesting, but we don't know much details about it, but it looks interesting. There was a Lion King attraction at Epcot about the environment, where the characters are like, wow, the environment sucks, we gotta save the planet. This was a place for a less Disney-fied version of the same ride, more updated to be about how we can fix the planet and stuff like that without the Lion King characters. But yeah, so one of the main Lion King attractions doesn't even exist anymore. Technically, the biggest Lion King attractions are Fiki's Planet Watch at Animal Kingdom, but this is pretty much a Lion King ride in name alone, as it's just a minor part of the Animal Kingdom's train section, as well as all its like conservation stuff. So it really has very little to do with Lion King, unless you count just real life animals being part of the Lion King stuff, which I guess it could be. Now there's a thing where statues that you try to find each character from the Lion Guard at Animal Kingdom, so that's something, I guess. Interesting, a little bit. I have to mention this, but there's also a Lion King section in PhilharMagic, but there's this weird Simba head that looks really bad. It's actually the worst part of the show because it looks like shit. Speaking of shit, Enchanted Tiki Room under new management was a crossover between Aladdin and the Lion King. I mentioned this in my Aladdin review, how shitty this ride is. Basically, it took a giant dump on a classic Disney attraction by having pointless IPs, which interrupted the classic Disney ride for basically no reason, with bad jokes. Yeah, this is terrible, and fortunately for us Disney World goers, we got the Enchanted Tiki Room back to its original form. Thankfully, we don't have to deal with any of this bullshit. Unfortunately, the Country Bears got a similar reverberation like this, where they forced Disney IP into a classic ride. Pissed me off. Hopefully the same thing happens to that ride as the Enchanted Tiki Room did. And the last thing is an eatery called Hakuna Matata, which is only in Disneyland Paris, where you get to eat in a jungle-inspired room, and I guess you can eat some bugs. I don't think you can even eat bugs, but we'll see. Here's a good close-up of this menu. It doesn't seem like there's anything really special here, just a basic sit-down eatery, not like a specialty one, you know what I mean? If you've been in Disney, you know what I mean. Anyway, let's go on to the rankings. To those watching are probably surprised to see The Lion King ranked a lot lower than the other three main Renaissance films, well, compared to the main ones, not Rescuers Down Under. Well, I mentioned some of my gripes of it, and it kind of those things take me out of the film. If it was more consistent between all this more goofy film and more epic film, but they don't gel right, and that kind of bothers me every time I watch it. Plus, only 2 musical numbers being really great, in my opinion, really also affects the film, especially since those 2 numbers are only early on in the film, the first half. So yeah, that's 2 big issues I have that make it a good film. A B tier's an 8. That's a good rating for it. It's just nowhere near as cream of the crop as the other Renaissance films, in my opinion. I can see why someone loves it a lot and gets really into that, but for me personally, it's just not my favorite one. It is still good though. So I count the princess ranking as anyone who's royalty, even queen. So I have Simba's mom, Sarabi, here in D tier. She doesn't do a whole lot. She gives him a lick and then doesn't back him up later on. What would your mother think? Yeah, so the big one is Nala. She's okay. She doesn't have much presence. She technically has a good singing voice, but at the same time, she's very little in the movie, especially as an adult. She doesn't back Simba up until Scar says that he killed Mufasa, and that's kind of lame. She should have been at least the one standing up for him. She's an interesting character, but very lacking in development. Sort of the problem I have with Jasmine, but even more to extreme degree, especially since a lot of scenes with Simba were cut for Timon and Pumbaa comic relief shit, which I'm not a big fan of, as I mentioned already. So yeah. Also, I don't understand why some people are like, well, this lion's actually hot. I'm a weirdo, but it's not anthropomorphic at all, so I don't get it. On the exact opposite note, a character that's probably the best in The Lion King is Scar. He does what other Disney villains have tried to do, and he succeeds tremendously. He succeeds for a very long time in the film. Most of the film, he's actually won his plan for the most part. And in the time span of the movie, it's for a very long period of time, where he does some very evil plan that actually goes off, and he loses at the very end, but for a long time, he had everything he wanted. He was not a very good leader because he was all about vain and ego. Unfortunately for him, maybe helping out the hyenas wasn't the best plan. I don't know how a drought happens, but, that's just how it works in the Lion King universe. Scar has a great song, and he has a great design, is animated lovely, and his voice actor, Jeremy Irons, does a fantastic job. Like, every line is just top-notch. Like, he sells it completely. You feel every bit of emotion and vainness from this character. He is pure evil, but you kind of see where he's coming from in a weird way. Like, he was gypped, basically. He's a scrawnier lion than his brother. He's had to go in the background while he'll never be king, essentially. And, he does try to help out the hyenas. He's just not very good at it. He lets his ego take center stage over everything else. So, even though he's one of the core classic pure evil villains, he still has a little bit more nuance to him. And that's why him and Ursula are up there, because they have that little bit of nuance. You can see where they're kind of coming from, even if they are pretty evil. And that's all you need from villain. You don't have to make them completely sympathetic, but they have a motivation that makes sense for the character. I like that a lot. That's why Scar is my number 2 highest ranked villain in Disney so far. As I mentioned multiple times in this video, I think the songs are very hit or miss in this film. Unfortunately, even though Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Little Mermaid were really top-heavy on this tier list, we're fortunately going back to the D tier, which sucks. Though you could say it's not that bad, since the first D tier song is one that was scrapped from the film, mostly. It was included in one of the DVD versions, but not in recent releases, unlike Human Again, where I don't understand why that song was scrapped. I guess in a little bit, but Morning Report, like I said, it adds nothing. It was in the Broadway version, so hey, we'll add it back, but it's not good. Sorry, Morning Report sucks. I don't think anyone's defending that song though. Then we jump up to C tier 2, Hakuna Matata, which is a song that does nothing for me. It's actually kind of annoying some parts. Some parts are better than others. This song is actually a song that I recognize more for being in Toy Story than Lion King, so I watched Toy Story probably a million times as a kid, and it plays near the end of that film for a short period of time. But the rest of the film, yeah, like I said, I'm not a big fan of Timon and Pumbaa in The Lion King. I found outside of the first movie, they're actually not bad. Like I said, Lion King 1.5, I think is actually a really good movie, and that's them the whole entire time. But in Lion King proper, they just don't work for me. So their song doesn't work either, especially since it has weird pauses to have fart jokes and not in front of the kids. I don't get that. I actually like the part where Simba sings the best, and that's why it's ranked at C tier. It's just, I don't know, it doesn't do a lot for me. It's like one of the most famous songs for the movie. I don't like it. Like I said, it was in Toy Story, my favorite movie. Alright, in B tier, we got two songs right next to each other. They have similar problems, like Just Can't Wait to Be King and Can You Feel the Love Tonight. I Can't Wait has some great visuals, but it's just about a kid saying how he wants to be a king. That's fine, but I'm not a big fan of Simba's singing voice. I guess I praised it earlier, but it sounded better in Hakuna Matata. I know it's supposed to be him being kind of bratty, but I don't really get into that as much. It works for what it is, but yeah, nothing about it's that great. And also Zazu, Mr. Bean, singing his part doesn't work for me either. Yeah, you know Zazu is voiced by Rowan Atkinson, otherwise known as Mr. Bean. There's a fun fact for you. Can You Feel the Love Tonight is super cheesy. Like, it's really cheesy. It's like the most cheesy love song ever written. It's too generic and really doesn't have a lot going on for the characters, other than the one short part where both Nala and Simba sing a short phrase. But you know who sings more of the song than they do? But their love song? Timon and Pumbaa, of course! And yeah, that brings it down. It's cheesy, and yeah, and honestly it might be worse than Just Can't Wait to Be King now I think about it. I'll have to listen to back to back again. And then it takes us up past A tier, all the way up to S tier to get to the two best songs by a landslide. These songs are way better than the other songs. Circle of Life and Be Prepared. Circle of Life is just a song that represents everything that's really makes Lion King really good. It's those epic qualities and grandness of feeling. It was a trailer for the original movie for a reason, and even the remake used this section as the trailer because it's such a great sequence and the music's great. It has a unique sound based off of African sounds, which is a pretty cool, great idea. Actually, using the language and instruments from that area was I would say, a top-notch idea, and I'm glad they did it because the intro, just the sun opening and the guy screaming that first note is so iconic. Everyone knows it. It's very powerful. The woman sings like she's like this is the most important thing ever, and it makes you feel like it's the most important thing ever. It's probably one of the best moments in The Lion King, to be honest. Other than Be Prepared. This song is great. It's one of the best villain songs, alright? Yeah, I ranked out the other villain song that I liked a lot. Scar's plan is getting unfolded, and of course the plan comes to fruition, which is what makes it even better. It gets more and more epic as it goes on, like Poor Unfortunate Souls. And the more impressive thing is that Scar's voice actor actually changes through the song, and you don't even know. That's so crazy. Jeremy Irons was not able to hit certain notes, so they got very talented voice actor Jim Cummings, who has voiced millions of Disney characters. He sang as Jeremy Irons during some of the higher notes near the end, replacing him, and you can barely tell, unless you're like really paying attention, you do not know that his voice changed actors midway through the song. That is super cool. It's not the main reason why I like this song. It's just a great sounding song. It's so bombastic, and you gotta love it. Anyway, that's the song ranking. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for the next interesting project, which is Pocahontas. See you then.